Hey everyone, welcome to Realization Hub. My name is Michelle Corazao-Dinu, and I'm an intuitive counselor, energy healer, and channeler who loves to bridge the gap between the unseen world of spirit, intuition, energy, and consciousness so that it can apply to your everyday human experience. Today's video is an energy update for April 2022. I'm going to be going over the energy dynamics for mass consciousness, those of you going through your awakening, and those of you going through your embodied enlightenment. If you like these videos, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. It really helps me out a lot. And if you're interested in working with me, you can find more information below. All right, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so let's talk a little bit about mass consciousness. First thing that was coming through to talk about was that mass consciousness and their relationship to reality itself is starting to change. If you think about the past and how mass consciousness would relate to reality itself, you might say that mass consciousness would assume that reality was very solid, that it didn't change much, or that if it did change, it would change slowly, or that if it did change a lot, it would be a temporary change and then go back to normal. But now, mass consciousness is starting to be aware that reality itself is kind of constantly fluctuating. It's kind of like the difference between standing on solid ground or walking on like a waterbed, or standing on solid ground or sitting in a boat in the middle of the ocean where the waves are just constantly in flux and the boat is constantly going up and down and up and down. Mass consciousness can feel it. They can feel that reality is not stable, that it's in flux. Now, for those in mass consciousness that don't like change, they resist change, this is actually kind of painful for them, because as they experience this constant fluctuation, they're kind of painfully agonizing, like, why is this happening? Why is all this change happening? They're getting frustrated by it. They're getting resistant to it. You know, they're really attached to reality being a certain way. And for those people who are attached to things not changing, they tend to have strong belief systems, like religious belief systems, or strong family belief systems, or societal belief systems that they are really attached to. So when it comes to this fluctuation in reality, to them, it feels like change is really bad, you know, like it's violating their beliefs, or it's going against their beliefs, and it might feel really, really wrong to them. For them, they almost, when I tune into them, the people in mass consciousness that don't want change, they feel like they just want to go backwards. You know, to them, going backwards isn't like going back in evolution to them. To them, going backwards is, for them, going back to a more simpler time, you know, where things weren't as complex, things were slower, things were, you know, just a certain way and they didn't change much, you know. And to them, I think that's what they're craving, is the simplicity. Because right now, with all the changes in reality that are happening, we've got feminine energy starting to rebalance on the planet. We've got masculine energy rebalancing on the planet. We have, you know, this kind of wave of spectrums kind of on the planet, like neurodivergent people, neurodivergent people. We've got, you know, non-binary people. We've got binary people. We've got a whole spectrum of sexual orientation. We've got different races. We've got different ages, you know. We have a lot of different complexities starting to come up to the surface and express themselves. And for the people on the planet like mass consciousness, you know, some people in mass consciousness, they don't like complexity. They want it to be very, very simple. So for them, going backwards is not actually going backwards for them. It's going to a simpler time where things were just not changing and much more simple. So with that said, there's the part of mass consciousness that does want change, except when I sense into them, it's almost like they feel that they're not ready for change. You know, it's like they want it, but they're not ready. It reminds me of someone who's complaining about everything in their life and nothing is working in their life. But when you actually go and say, hey, why don't you just quit your job? Why don't you just move to a different country? Why don't you change your career? Why don't you just do something and change something? They're just kind of like, oh, I'm scared to do that. Like, I want to, but I'm scared. I want to, but I'm scared. I want to, but I'm scared. So the tension is building on the planet because no one's really satisfied right now. The people that don't want change and the people that do want change, both of those parties on the planet, they are not really satisfied with life right now. They look kind of resistant and irritable and angry and frustrated. And, they're trying to function, they're trying to do life as normal, but it's not working. Something is not really working for them. And so I do notice that mass consciousness has a tendency to act out at this time. And by acting out is, just maybe be more violent, maybe be more spontaneous, and go against the grain, or, suddenly quit, or suddenly walk out, or suddenly die, or suddenly, change something in their lives. It reminds me, what it reminds me of? Kind of like a midlife crisis, when like someone is like, they just all of a sudden start changing everything in their life. And you're like, whoa, where did that come from? You've always been like this, but now you're like unpredictable. That's kind of what it feels like, where this tension is building in mass consciousness. And there are some people in mass consciousness that cannot take the tension. It's too much. It's too much stress. It feels to them like no matter what direction they go into, whether they go backwards, trying to take the world back to simpler times, or whether they're going forwards into change, they both directions seem kind of rough or intolerable or stressful to some degree. And so in a way, mass consciousness is a little bit in a pickle. They're not happy with where they're at, but yet they're having a really hard time with the direction that they want to go in. So I think it's safe to say that we have really stirred the pot on a global level. And by we, I mean those of us that have gone through our awakening and our embodied enlightenment. We have brought so much consciousness to the planet, even if we're still the minority. Our light that we bring into our bodies and onto this planet, our level of consciousness that we have raised within ourselves is having a huge impact on the planet right now. And it is impacting the planet pretty quickly. A lot of the changes that we experience in our own expansions and our own integrations and all the energy dynamics that we transform through is starting to have a pretty immediate impact on the planet. So mass consciousness is feeling like the waves coming from a lot of the conscious beings on the planet right now. So with that said, I am noticing that there is this kind of puberty that's happening on the planet right now. And that's between what I would say the old navigation system is and the new navigation system. Now, when we think about someone going through awakening and into embodied enlightenment, they usually start from a very old navigation system, which is making decisions from the mind, processing everything through the mind, processing everything emotionally and mentally for long amounts of time, regurgitating thoughts, chewing on thoughts, analyzing, interpreting, thinking, feeling, processing and processing and processing until we take an action, until we take a step, until we make a decision, okay? And that's a very old way of processing, old way of navigating our lives. And in that, there tends to be attachment to beliefs, to, ways of doing things, to our identities. And this creates a lot of power and control dynamics in our lives where we're not trying to create our lives, we're trying to control our lives. And, usually that comes from levels of fear or non-trust or lack of clarity or not being connected or allowing our wisdom to come through. So that's kind of like the old navigation system, and that is still very much on the planet right now. It's, most people on the planet are operating from that old navigation system. But then we have these really bright lights on the planet, which an earthquake just happened, by the way. It just shook the room. Anyways, what I was just saying is, then we have these like really bright lights on the planet, these conscious beings, these people that have gone through their awakening and their embodied enlightenment. And, the more that evolution matures, the more that a person comes into a new navigation system. They start to navigate their lives in a completely different way. And some of the ways I might describe that is that, people are present. They're more in their own presence. They approach things with their presence. They're in the moment. And they're not operating necessarily from their mind. They use their mind, but they don't operate from it, and they don't make decisions from their mind, and they don't do a lot of processing. A lot of times they are operating from their knowingness, or they're operating from clarity or wisdom or intuitive ability, and they're kind of allowing a flow in their life, and their wisdom is guiding them. And there's less need to process, there's less need to control, there's less need to have power, and instead they're living life from passion, they're living life from trust, they're allowing and they're creating, okay? And they're diving into their creation. So this is kind of like the new navigation system on the planet. And so right now there's kind of a puberty happening both in individuals and both on a massive level on the planet, where we've got two navigation systems interacting with each other, okay? The old and the new. And, I can feel mass consciousness kind of holding on to the old navigation system. Like, we want change, but we want it to be planned. We want it to be structured. We want it to be safe. We want to understand it. We want to understand how the change is going to happen, how we're going to do that. We want to think about it. We want it to be linear. We want it to be gradual. We want that old system of change or navigation. Whereas what's kind of knocking on the door on the planet right now is a new way of navigating change on the planet, where change can happen spontaneously. It can happen, outside of that time and space, where things can unexpectedly happen really fast, or things happen a lot slower than expected, or where our intuition is guiding it, or our wisdom is guiding it, or things are kind of synchronistically happening. Ultimately, I just see where there's this potential for things to change really, 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 really fast. And that's because, I saw this image of, it's kind of a funny image, but I saw this woman, that represents mass consciousness. So I'd say, I saw this woman, I'll describe the image first and then I'll interpret it for you. But I saw this woman, she was wearing this like sparkly, like red carpet dress. And then she had this slingshot. She had a big ball in the slingshot, and she was, pulling the string or the rubber band way back, creating a lot of tension. And she was starting to aim that slingshot. All right. And so what I noticed is that, mass consciousness has this feminine energy that is starting to kind of step up to the plate, if you will, starting to emerge in mass consciousness. And she's not just taking on the typical role, of being in the background, being told what to do, taking care of everyone and nurturing everyone in very small and limited ways. She's starting to come forth with more, dignity and more beauty and more of this power, inner power, of like, I'm here and I'm here to like be here too, not just be in the background, So I really do feel that presence of feminine energy starting to emerge more in mass consciousness. And quite frankly, it's showing up as beauty, it's showing up in beautiful ways, like more connection with people, more nurturing, more love, just more of that intuition and approaching things in, non-abusive ways, but also smart and powerful ways. So when I tune into that image of her holding that slingshot, it reminds me of the tension that's building in mass consciousness. Like there's such a strong tension building. And that tension is like, we want change, but we don't want change. We want change, but how are we going to do this change? We want change, but like we're scared of the change and we're not sure if we're ready for this change. And that's the tension that's building. And then there's that potential of letting go of that slingshot and pew, like that ball in that slingshot traveling so fast, And that's really what I feel about mass consciousness is there's this kind of readying or this tension building that could potentially lead to a very fast change on the planet, at least energetically. And when I was feeling into that image more and interpreting that image even more, I felt that the slingshot is typically used as a weapon. You can put something in there and pull it back and knock something out. You can knock out someone with a slingshot. So I was kind of tuning into what is that slingshot being aimed at right now? And I actually see that that slingshot is being aimed at power. So I wouldn't be surprised if the feminine energy is intuitively kind of emerging right now to take down power right now. She's, this feminine energy is kind of coming to the surface, and she's coming to the surface in beautiful ways, and she's also coming to the surface in very empowering ways. And it looks like that feminine energy on the planet is trying to aim towards taking the power or the domination down. So the first thought that came to me when I was kind of tuning into that was these big leaders on the planet that are, world leaders that are misusing power or, dysfunctional power, things like that. So, I'm kind of curious if we'll start to see, events and situations where we start to see power kind of weakening in the world leaders, where they start getting maybe taken down in some way or just dismantled in some way. Can't confirm that, but that was just kind of the intuition coming through. So I'm just going to stay open and curious about what I'm picking up and how it kind of transpires. So if you feel like things are moving backwards in the world right now, think of it as a slingshot. You have to pull the slingshot backwards to project whatever's inside of it forwards. Okay, so that feeling of things going backwards is an example of that energy dynamic of kind of building the tension so that it can be released and there can be more of a fast change towards something. And in this case, it might be related to power on the planet. Now, I overall over the last, couple months, do see that the level of consciousness is rising on the planet, is continuing to rise on the planet. And so this is continuing to create waves of energetic changes on the planet. And again, it's going to be maybe an unstable feeling for a while. And you might want to get used to that because this is, reality is actually fluid. It fluctuates. It's not set in stone. And this is what's changing on the planet. And this is the difference between the old navigation system and the new navigation system. The old navigation system sees reality as very solid and unchangeable or just very slow to change. Whereas that new navigation system, things can change very quickly. Things can change all the time. Everything's in flux constantly. So the planet is starting to see this constant fluctuation in the reality of things. And people are feeling the instability of that. And maybe feeling ungrounded or just getting very triggered around not knowing what to expect. And that's very natural as you start to adjust to that. But eventually, from my own experience, you do adjust to reality being very fluid. And so I assume that the globe and mass consciousness will also eventually adjust to things being very fluid. And instead of seeing it as unstable, they might start to see it as free. Things are just in free motion. When things start to deconstruct to a certain degree in energy, let's say we had old systems and old structures of beliefs in our reality, that helps keep reality very solid and still and steady, and it doesn't change. But once we start to deconstruct like all of those belief systems in the energy of mass consciousness or in the energy of the planet, suddenly there's freedom. Okay, it's like knocking down all the columns in a house, all the pillars in a house. Suddenly, instead of that, the house is going to collapse, but that's not a good example. Anyways, moving on. The point is, when you deconstruct and you let go of all of those beliefs, you create freedom. Okay, and when that starts to happen, it can feel like chaos to some people. It can feel like disruption to some people. It can feel like instability to some people. But really what it is the experience of freedom, where things can like really change quickly and are constantly fluid and responding to you and responding to how you create. Now, even though I see mass consciousness aware that reality is kind of fluctuating all the time right now, I don't really see them aware that they are having an impact on reality. I can see them kind of in pain and angry and frustrated with how things are changing in really uncontrollable, spontaneous, not so fun ways. But I don't really see them looking to themselves and saying, oh, reality is fluid. That means I can create whatever reality I want. I don't really see mass consciousness tapping into that yet. And going back to mass consciousness and how the level of consciousness is rising on the planet, this is, I think I've said this many times, but this is where we're switching away from very superficial changes to real deep changes on the planet. So, yeah, there's going to be a continuance of, I would say, minor disruptions in mass consciousness in April. I don't see any like huge, tsunami-like energetic waves moving through mass consciousness. I just kind of see this like pretty steady fluctuation of kind of small waves rippling through mass consciousness energetically. I do notice mostly, though, the energy of pain and the energy of anger in the air in mass consciousness. So how is this going to impact you and your human experience? Well, mass consciousness, you can think about mass consciousness as a weather system. So whatever mass consciousness is going through, you may or may not feel that. And a lot of times people mistake that for themselves, what they're feeling. Like if they start feeling angry all the time, they might think, I have a problem, I'm angry all the time. But really, maybe they're just picking up on mass consciousness and the anger that is brewing in mass consciousness. So with that said, be aware that there tends to be some pain in the air and some anger in the air and some just overall frustration kind of feeling, this resistance kind of feeling, and definitely lingering fear in the air as well. But I was mostly noticing anger. With that said, how I notice this impacting you is that I see that this will kind of bring another wave of expansion for you, where you are releasing unconsciousness from your body. In order to bring more consciousness into our bodies, more consciousness onto the planet, we do have to release unconsciousness. So, in April, you may be picking up on that, that energetic detox that's happening on a mass consciousness level where they're releasing unconsciousness. So you might be releasing unconsciousness. So You might run into these experiences where you're like, I don't know how I want to do this. I don't know how I want to relate to this person. I don't know how to express myself in this situation. I don't know how to see this situation or how to look at this experience. And I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. And that's kind of what it's like to operate from unconsciousness. So a tip I have for you in the month of April is to bring your consciousness, especially to those experiences where you claim that you don't know something, or that you don't know how, or you don't know when, or you don't know what. It's a good time to actually say, well, that's a limitation, that's a lie, that's unconsciousness, and that's not me. I'm aware, I'm present, and I do know, because you do. And so you might ask yourself, well, if I did know how to do this, what would I do? If I did know what to say, what would I say? If I did know how to relate to this person, how would I relate to them? If I did know how to see the situation, what would I see? If I did know, this is what I know. And just practice knowing, okay? Practice being aware of something. That's a great way to just go beyond that unconsciousness and really just let it go and allow more of your awareness to come into your body. I did pull some cards for mass consciousness, and I'm going to start with some of the tarot cards that came out. One was the Fool, reversed. This came out reversed. Immediately when I felt into the Fool card, I felt this, this feeling of like wanting to take a big leap, but wanting to dive into something new, but being very hesitant and afraid of diving into it and taking that leap. And so this is mass consciousness. This is kind of like the chapter that mass consciousness is in right now. Like there is this potential to dive into a lot of new experiences, a lot of new systems, a lot of new ways of doing things, a lot of new ways of operating that new navigation system. There's a lot of potential for mass consciousness to take the leap into these. But currently on the planet, it's a little blocked. It's a little bit like hesitation. Like, should we trust this new thing? Should we try this new thing? What if it doesn't work out? What if it doesn't come together? Again, it reminds me of puberty, between the old way of navigating things and the new way of navigating things. Eventually in that new way of navigating things, you do just trust the change. You just go into it and you trust it, and it works out. But we're not there yet on a planetary level. We've got mass consciousness who wants to dive in, doesn't feel ready to dive in, and is questioning diving in. Okay. The other card that came up with that card was the Hierophant, and that was reversed. And so, what I was picking up about this card was that there's a lot of questioning of beliefs. There's a lot of belief systems on the planet, from religion, from society, from cultures, from family, from ancestors, from, all the old ways. And they're all being questioned right now. They're all still kind of standing, but I did just see an image about these belief systems. I don't know if you've ever seen like on a construction site where you've seen like, just really tall ladders, what is the word for it though? It's like the thing you stand on so you can paint on the ceiling, a scaffold. So let's say there's like these really tall scaffolds, and they're so tall that they're kind of wavering because they're out of balance, and they're not really safe because you stacked all the scaffolds really high. It's like standing on the top of a scaffold and it's just kind of moving and swaying. Like, it reminds me of like all these belief systems on the planet right now. They're still standing, but they are very much like a house of cards right now. they're getting ready to collapse. They're getting ready to kind of fall away and break down and, lose their structure that they're holding on the planet. And so this is kind of what's slowing down mass consciousness from taking a leap right now. It's just all these belief systems that are old and that are no longer serving us. But they do look like they are close to kind of tumbling down, falling apart, starting to deconstruct. Very close. They're definitely unstable. And then the other card that came with this was the Three of Wands. And this came out with these two cards, the Fool and the Hierophant. And really, when I felt into this card, I felt like there was a momentum building. Like, yes, we're hesitating to take a leap on a global level. Yes, there are lots of blockages around, the belief systems that are still holding old things in place. But there is a momentum building in a certain direction, and it's going to continue going in that direction. All right, the other card I pulled for mass consciousness, these two came out together. One was leadership, and this was reversed. And the other one was manifestation, and that was upright. All right. So when I looked at this leadership card reversed, I really felt into that, the leadership on the planet that is outdated, that is old, that is in dysfunctional levels of power and control and dominance. And I literally saw an image of someone kind of lassoing these world leaders and pulling them down. And so I wouldn't be surprised if we start to see not the fall of leadership, but just them being dismantled or taken down or really, really limited in some ways, or just, where they're going to have a hard time with their power games for sure, because it just looks like, the planet's not really tolerating it anymore. And they're starting to, go in there and take control and, try to take these power games down. And so that's what I'm noticing about the leadership on the planet, at least the old leadership on the planet. Now, then we've got this card, manifestation. And when I saw this card, I saw almost like a Mexican fiesta, image. And it just reminded me of all these people coming together, all these people sharing food, connecting, having fun, dancing. The world just wants to enjoy itself. Mass consciousness just wants to have fun. They just want to enjoy their lives. They want to connect again. They want to socialize. They want to have fun. They want to, after the pandemic, I think, we're still coming out of it. It just seems like the world is ready to just, live and enjoy their lives again and, not be so scared all the time, actually have fun. So I do see a lot of this connection energy happening in April, where people are connecting with people, people are socializing more, people are, having fun, sharing things. And this is helping to lighten everything up so that the energies can move, okay? And when the energies are lightened up and everyone's having fun and everyone's, lightening everything up, okay, that's when energies can change really quickly and new things can be created. Okay, so there is some wisdom coming through about, how we're going to move towards that change. And it looks like, some people in mass consciousness are playing a role of just having fun again, just getting out there and having fun. The world might be a shit show, but, there are people in mass consciousness ready to go have fun anyways, ready to enjoy life anyways, and they're actually doing the planet a favor when they do that. They're not in dreamland. They're not ignoring the reality of things. They're literally helping to lighten the load of the planet right now so that things can be created. And the last card I pulled for mass consciousness was this beauty card. And the goddess's name is Benzai 10, number 6. And when I tuned into this card, I just saw this flowing energy. And it did remind me of the beauty of the new system that's starting to kind of show up on a global level, where, you know, wisdom starts to guide the planet, where, you know, kindness and love start, you know, really beautiful things start to flow through these experiences and, you know, guide the planet in certain ways. I mean, you could see when the war started with Ukraine, for example, there were suddenly lots of people helping out, donating money, rising to the cause, coming together, showing lots of love and support in many different ways, in many beautiful ways. And, you know, this is an example of that feminine energy starting to emerge in very powerful ways on the planet. It does have an impact. And this is just the tip of the iceberg with this flow-like experience of feminine energy. Because I don't know if you've ever had one of those days where you were going to go into a situation and you didn't know how it was going to work out. And it turned out that once you went into a situation, everything just kind of came together in its own way, maybe in weird ways, maybe in spontaneous ways, maybe in synchronistic ways, but it worked out and you didn't even have to think about it. You didn't have to plan it. It just came together for you. That's the new navigation system, where we don't have to think about it. We don't have to plan it. It just, we have that wisdom and that knowingness that takes us into it, and it all starts to come together for us. That's the beauty that's starting to emerge on the planet. All right, the last two cards that I pulled was regeneration. It's like a tree that's growing out of lava. And then we've got serendipity. Got that annoying glare. There we go. All right, so immediately I picked up this destructive energy that's happening in mass consciousness. Again, there are belief systems that are getting ready to just kind of collapse and fall apart. And so we might be feeling that destructive energy, and there's a tendency to judge destructive dynamics where things are destroyed or where things fall apart or where things collapse. You know, there's a tendency to have negative reactions to that. But it's really a natural part of the creative process. You do have to get rid of the old stuff in order to create the space for the new stuff. And so if you see on the news or in the world things falling apart, things dying, things not working out, things collapsing, you might have the tendency to freak out, or you could see it a different way, like this regeneration that's happening, like a rebirth, like the phoenix rising out of the ashes. And even in your own life, you might individually be feeling something that's dying in your life. You don't want to hold on to it. You actually want to let it go, let it die, because something is going to be reborn from it. Okay, and this is a part of the wisdom that's coming through to help you relate to mass consciousness in an empowering way. And that is, you don't need to freak out when things are being destroyed or deconstructing or falling apart right in front of your eyes, because it is a rebirth, because it is regenerative, because it is necessary to create new things. So it's okay. It's temporary. Okay? And this is coming right there with it, serendipity. Things might unexpectedly fall apart, but things can also unexpectedly spontaneously and synchronistically fall together. There's that beautiful new navigation system that comes in to bring things together for us. So I have a feeling that things might be falling apart and rebirthing, but that we have this serendipity and this luck and this synchronistic energy that comes through and helps make things work at the same time. You know, maybe work in new ways, maybe work in different ways, maybe bring new ideas, new inventions, new technology to the planet, but it does bring things together so that it works. All right. I am complete with that message about mass consciousness. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel. It really helps me out a lot. Let's move on to those of you in your awakening. Hello to those of you going through awakening. Thanks for watching. This month, I could feel so many potentials out there for you, just infinite potentials. However, I noticed that you seem to be a little bit shut down to them, unable to see them, unable to sense them, unable to believe in them. In a way, I see you kind of missing the opportunities that are right in front of you, feeling indifferent towards potentials of your life, and maybe overall struggling with pessimism on how anything may work or not work for you. So this month, I really do see this ripple effect kind of energy going through your energy. And, you know, when I see the image of a ripple, what it reminds me of is how one small change can create a ripple effect. It can change a lot around it. And so I see that in April, you're bringing more awareness to the impact that you have on yourself, on others, and your community, and maybe even the globe. And so, for example, you may go through internal changes. You might go through a spiritual detox of some kind, or you might have a shift in consciousness, and you'll start to notice how that impacts your friends, your family. You'll start to notice how suddenly your community starts to change in some way. Or maybe you'll notice something in the news that happens after you have a shift in consciousness or go through a spiritual detox. And so I see you becoming aware of your spiritual nature and how your energy and the changes that you're going through energetically is impacting everything around you. And this is important because this is prompting you to kind of get real with yourself and to start really questioning how you want to relate to this world, how you want to create, what you want to create, how you want to present yourself, what you want to do with your life, because it will have an impact, not just on you, but on everything around you. And it's so important for you to stay open right now, because there is a tendency for you to be bored, indifferent, miss the opportunities, not see the potentials, not believe in the potentials, be pessimistic in some way. And this is the time where you really need to stay open. Now, I was kind of curious, like, why are they feeling bored? Why are they feeling indifferent? Why do they feel a little bit maybe lost or disconnected from these potentials? And I was seeing that those of you in your awakening are kind of going through a bit of a void-like state right now, or void-like space, I guess you will. A void is kind of like staring at a blank canvas. There's really nothing on it, and it's up to you to create what you want. And it can be frustrating to look at that blank canvas because there's nothing on it, and you can't necessarily like think about what's next on that canvas. You just have to let an idea come to you and then just kind of dive into, painting on that canvas and just, go with the flow and see what happens and eventually create a piece of artwork. All right. And so you're kind of like staring at a blank canvas, and it can be boring because maybe you're used to things happening for you. Maybe you're used to figuring out what's next. Maybe you're used to something prompting you on the outside to tell you what to do, to tell you who you are, to tell you what's going to happen, something to follow, you know. But a void is prompting you to go within. A void is prompting you to find your next step, to find your answer, to find your passion, to find what you want and what you want to create from within. Okay, so I do see a natural withdrawal happening for those of you in your awakening, where you might feel more prompted to be alone, to go on a vacation, to get away, to just hang out alone in your house, to take more breaks, to rest more, to just be alone more. And there's nothing wrong with you. That is just what it's kind of like to be in a void. It's kind of important to be with yourself, to be present with yourself, because that's where you're going to find your next step. It's not going to be out there telling you what to do. You're not going to find it in another person, in a teacher, in a healer, in another psychic. You're not going to find it out there. You're going to find it in here. Okay, and that can be so frustrating because it's like looking at that blank canvas, and there can be a lot of unconsciousness there. Like, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I want. I don't know what's next. I don't know who I am. I don't know what to do. But the only way to kind of get out of that is just to allow an idea to come through, allow inspiration, allow kind of that spark that happens, that spark, that initiation that happens, that goes, aha, I'm going to put blue on this canvas. I'm going to put yellow on this canvas. I'm going to put orange and purple. I'm going to start drawing this on the canvas. And then after that, you get another idea, and you create a tree, you create a bird. You be like Bob Ross, and you create a little happy stone. Okay, and more ideas come, and you create the weather, and you create a house, or you create a mountain, or you create whatever you want on that canvas until suddenly it's a full, beautiful painting, and you dive right into it and you experience it. And so this is where I see you at right now, in kind of a void-like state with very little outside clues about what is next for you. And the point of that is to prompt you to go within. So instead of trying to ask everyone else what you should do next, instead of trying to process it and think about it, you want to be with yourself. You want to create that spaciousness and that stillness for ideas to rise to the surface. So I feel that it's really important for you, as much as you might want to close down and shut down and go into boredom, or to go into indifference, or not care about your life, or not feel inspired, or like it's going nowhere, or maybe you feel a lack of passion, or just a lack of connection with what's next for you. This is a good time to stay open anyways, because that's what's going to allow you to connect. That's what's going to allow you to get the idea. That's what's going to allow you to have the passion come through, the inspiration to come through. You got to stay open, okay? So might be a good idea for you in April to carry around a notebook, or just on your iPhone, create some notes where you can put ideas. Okay, because an idea might come to the surface, and you might, kind of like a bubble, pop that bubble and say, that's not possible, or that's not a good idea, or, that won't work for me, or whatever. And really, the wisdom I want to share with you is, even if it's a stupid idea, a crazy idea, an impossible idea, something that you don't understand, stay open to it. Just write it down. Don't suppress it. Don't pop it. Don't crush it. Don't bury it. Learn how to let your ideas flow, because your ideas are going to lead you to the idea that takes you to what's next for you. Okay, so practice staying open to your ideas, even if you don't know how it's going to work, even if you don't know how it's going to happen, even if it seems crazy, huge, impossible, or ridiculous. Stay open to it anyways. Just let those ideas flow. Okay. I did notice one other kind of layer to what those of you in your awakening are going through. And this looks like you are releasing your attachment to things. And it might be a little bit painful if you don't release your attachment to it. Kind of reminds me of Patricia, or I'm not sure if I pronounced it right, but Patricia from that movie, House of Gucci. Lady Gaga plays her character. And, Patricia, I don't know how you say it, but anyways, Patricia in this movie, I'm totally butchering her name, but so Patricia in this movie, she's really attached to the name of Gucci, the brand of Gucci, the family of Gucci, the business, the money, all the possessions, her lifestyle, her husband. She's really attached to it to the point where it's painful when it's taken away from her. It's painful when she gets stripped of her marriage. It's painful when she gets stripped of her business roles. It's painful for her because she's so attached to it, okay? And what I'm noticing is that you're going through a stripping process. You are kind of stripping old identities. Okay? You're stripping away things that you're attached to that are getting in the way, all right? And there's a tendency to go into pain about that, to be attached to it and to want to hold on to it and to be into pain that it's falling away. But you want to remember the wisdom, which is let it go. It's being stripped for a reason, not because you're losing it, but because eventually you'll integrate it, and eventually it'll just be a facet of you that you can access whenever you want, like an actor with a huge closet full of costumes. You can, pick these multifaceted parts of you consciously and act them out when you please. But right now, you got to release your attachment to them so that they can integrate. Okay, so that they can eventually integrate. And until then, you want to attach to these parts of you or these identities of you that are limiting you right now and getting in the way of what's next for you, because that will create the freedom, that will create the space for you to access your wisdom, access your clarity, connect with yourself, get the idea, get the inspiration, get the passion to pursue what's next for you. So I did pull some cards for you. First card that I pulled was Two of Cups reversed. Immediately picked up kind of like an emotional blockage here. And I believe this emotional blockage is about pessimism, is about, where emotionally you're blocking yourself from seeing the opportunity, from tuning into your potentials, from opening up to potentials and opportunities that are there in front of you that you don't see. Okay. And particularly this emotional block that I was seeing was this kind of one-sided energy where maybe you're giving your energy away but not receiving. Or maybe it's the opposite where you're taking from other people but you're not giving. There seems to be an imbalance between giving and receiving in your energy. Another imbalance that I was picking up was a tendency to want to do something the way that it's done before. Let's say like you want to be a tennis player and you're like, oh, I really love Serena Williams. I'm going to be just like her. And you try to do the training just like her. You go to the same, school, the same coach. You try to repeat exactly what she did so you can be like Serena Williams, the tennis player. Okay. But the imbalance is that you're very unique. Your truth is very unique. And what's next for you might be unique. It might not even exist yet. And so there's an emotional block where maybe you're looking for someone else to follow, or maybe you're looking for someone else to tell you what to do or how to do something, but it's really up to you to kind of find your own path. Do it in your own way. The other card that I pulled was Flow of Prosperity, Lakshmi. And this was reversed when I pulled it out. So immediately I could feel that you were cutting off your flow of abundance. Now, abundance isn't just money. Maybe you're struggling with money, and that would be an example of cutting off your flow of abundance. But abundance can come through in every single way possible. It can come through love, time, an abundance of ideas, an abundance of creativity, an abundance of humor. Abundance can come in so many ways to serve us and to help us and to support us and nurture us and love us. And abundance is there for everyone. There is no little pool of abundance that everyone is sharing. your abundance is always there for you, period. Okay? So you have a flow between you and your abundance. And if you shut down your energy, you close down, you're closing yourself off to your own abundance. That's when you start having money problems. That's when you start cutting yourself off from your own creativity. That's when you start cutting yourself off from your own ideas, from your own information, from your own connection. And that's why I'm saying that it's important for you in April to practice staying open. You might be feeling pessimistic. You might be feeling emotionally blocked. But it is very important for you to stay open anyways so that you can increase this flow of abundance. Because you're going to need this to create. You know, a lot of you are out there, you know, with these ideas and you're like, I don't know how that's going to work out. I don't have the money for that. I don't know how it's all going to work out. Don't worry about that. Just stay open. Because that's how it comes to you. You stay open to your abundance, to your flow of prosperity. You stay open. You say, it's possible. It's going to work out. It's all going to come together. I can trust this. Just stay open. Okay? Another card that came out was surrender. And although this card looks kind of gloomy here, I was actually seeing a bright sun in this card. And so really what I think your growth is right now is surrender to how things can work out for you. Surrender to allowing things to work out for you. Allowing things to support you. Allowing things to nurture you. Allowing things to come to you to help you. It can be too easy to stay in pain and stay in doubt and stay in pessimism and think that what we want or what's next for us isn't real or isn't possible or isn't going to happen. But that's not true. You know, if you want to open up to your abundance, you have to let that go. You have to let go all those beliefs that don't allow you to stay open. And instead, you need to stay open so that you can allow your prosperity to happen. The other card I pulled was this versatility card. And the image that I saw in this card, clairvoyantly, was a window. And so I'm really getting that impression that there are so many windows of opportunity out in front of you. And they might be different from what you're used to considering. They might be totally different. And, you know, this is kind of telling me that maybe it's beneficial to allow yourself to think outside the box. Allow yourself to consider different options. Explore some different options. Bring variety to your ideas. You know, maybe a different location, a different place to live, a different job, a new career, a pivot, you know, new relationship, finding new people, making new friends. You know, variety is going to help you. Changing things up is going to help you. All right. So, with that said, I'm going to leave you with a little tip, and that is to stay open. I've already mentioned that. Sometimes people, you know, when they feel like they're shutting down, they come up with something that they can tell themselves that helps them stay open. Maybe it's just like a phrase like, everything's working out for me. Everything's falling apart so that it can come together. Or I can trust myself and it's all going to work out. You know, just people can have like a phrase that they tell themselves when they're feeling like they're shutting down so that that can help them stay open. Okay. Some people are more physical. They like to touch themselves. You know, sometimes when I felt myself shutting down, I could feel my heart closing down. It would help me to put my hand on my chest and just remind myself, stay open. And I would start to feel my heart open up again. Okay. So play with ways that you can stay open when you want to close down. and see how it goes. Because really what you're doing is you're staying open to your abundance and your ideas and the change that is brewing for you. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel. And we'll move on to those of you going into your embodied enlightenment. Hello to those of you going through your embodied enlightenment. In April, I see you, kind of this image of you on the floor, almost like you're like scrapbooking or doing like a vision board or just a brainstorm, but it does look like you're designing your own world, energetically. It looks like you're designing your own world. And the more I tuned into that, the more, I kind of had this feeling like there was something that was old, that was maybe done, that was no longer really working for you, or just outdated. You weren't getting anything out of it anymore. And it's time for a change, consciously, a conscious change. And so I see you energetically kind of redesigning your life, specifically the foundation of your life. What your ideal schedule would look like, how much time you'd give to yourself, to your friends, to your loved ones, what you want to do with your time, like how much you want to work, what you want to do at work, what you don't want to do at work. Like it looks like a total redesign. And as much as it looks like you're redesigning something from scratch, it's definitely not scratch. I can feel that you're not, it's not like that experience where like everything gets destroyed and you have to start from scratch. It's definitely not like that. It seems to be like this feeling that, your foundation is changing. It's fragile. It's ready to kind of crumble away, and not in a bad way, in a way that serves you, because you deserve to live a life that works for you, 100 times more, 1,000 times more. So I see your wisdom kicking in, and it's kind of, going into this kind of like energy design type state of like, this is what I would do with my time. This is what I do if I change this. This is what I would do if I let this go. I would do more of this, more of that. I do it this way, not that way, So I don't see, like in that energy design process, like I see so much connection and clarity and wisdom in that. You look very clear about what you would like your life to look like next. So I don't see a need to go through a clarification process. I just see you kind of exploring the design of your new life. Now, with that said, when I was kind of looking at a snapshot of you, I did see you kind of walking on eggshells, almost like the foundation of your life was very fragile, like I said before. So I do think this is where the wisdom is kicking in, so that, things might start breaking away in small ways, and that's okay. You want to let it go. You want to let it die. You want to release it, because you are starting to design a new chapter, or a new life, a new lifestyle, actually. And it looks like that might make you feel a little bit like on edge. You might feel fear around that, or you might have the human side of you that's, struggling with beliefs and negative beliefs, or, fears of things not working out, or having anxiety about how things are going to work out if you change something. But really, behind that, I just see so much clarity, so much connection, so much wisdom, so much presence around really what you want. And so this is your reminder that, when you design something in your life and you dive into it, things do come together to work out for you. So with that said, I think the biggest impact this is having on your human self is fear. The fear of change, the fear of trusting the change, the fear that, tries to come up with all the ways that something might bad happen. And really, this is a good time for you to relate to your fear differently. Specifically, the way I see you relating to your fear differently is reframing things. A lot of times when we have this destructive energy in our life that comes through to kind of break things apart and wash old things away, We can think of that as a negative experience. Like, it's scary. It happens out of nowhere. We don't trust it. It feels like things are falling apart. We can have so many negative beliefs around destroying and destruction and deconstruction and letting things go. So I really see like what can help you with this fear is reframing things. Like, oh, when I let things go, that's when things come together. Or, when I let things go, this is creating space for the life I really want. This is giving me more freedom. This is giving me more purpose. This is giving me more health, more passion, whatever it is. But you can reframe these destructive experiences as something that is working for you, that is positive, that is bringing something together for you, instead of kind of watching the destruction and what's leaving your life and fixating on that. So I did pull some cards for you, and I got these two cards, Seven of Pentacles upright and Nine of Swords upright. So Seven of Pentacles, this is kind of like an energy of waiting for the harvest. You've planted the seeds, you've been nurturing it, you've been building the momentum around something, and you're kind of waiting for the harvest. You're waiting for the results. Okay, it's like a pause while you wait for all your hard work and your labor to come to fruition. So there's definitely something that's telling me that you've been working on something, you've been putting your energy into something, and maybe you've been doing it for a while, and maybe you haven't quite seen the results yet. But this is the confirmation that you need to keep going with that. The momentum is building, and you want to keep going with that energy of creating that thing, doing the work, showing up, getting it done. Okay. The other card that came out was this Nine of Swords. Now, this can represent someone who's in anguish. They're struggling with insomnia. They've got these nightmarish type fears. They're spiraling, going through a downward mental spiral about things, pessimistic, mentally in anguish. Okay. And so I can sense that, this is your biggest hurdle with making change in your life, is your own mind. Your mind tends to get in the way and get really pessimistic about it, or really scared about it, not trusting it, thinking about all the ways that things could go wrong. But again, this card came out with the Seven of Pentacles. So it's saying that, yeah, you've kind of been like this. You've been letting the fears get the best of you. You've been letting these fears torture you and hold you back. But this card is saying, but there's something that you've been working on. There's something that you've been giving your energy to, and maybe you haven't seen all the results of it yet. But this is telling you that you're on the right track and you need to keep going, and that it's going to work out. Okay. The other cards that I pulled, was Milk and Honey, Time to Go, and Enchanting Gifts. Now, immediately, I just feel like these are reinforcing cards that are saying, you can let go of whatever you need to let go of. Like, there's definitely a situation that you're in that is outdated, where it's no longer serving you, it's no longer doing anything from you, you're not getting anything out of it anymore, it's old, it's done, you need to walk away from it. Now, this card is kind of confirming that, like, there's an ending that you need to recognize and start to walk away from it. Stop giving your energy to it because it's dying, it's going away. And this card is saying milk and honey. You're entering, you can trust this change that's happening, this redesign that you're doing in your life. You know, this is you entering into a very sweet phase, milk and honey, where you are nurtured with all the good things. You know, all the good things are there to support you and nurture you, bringing such sweetness to life. And that there are unexpected gifts. This is enchanting gifts. Like, open up this gift of change, because there's something there waiting for you that you don't know, that you can't see, but you have to go into that experience to unwrap that gift and see what it is. So I feel like these 3 cards are coming out to really reinforce, like, this thing that you've been worrying about, this change that you've been worrying about, you know, leaving something behind, going into something new, maybe taking a risk, just redesigning your life in some way. You know, it's going to work out. Keep going towards that life redesign. Keep working on that. Let go of your fears. Trust that sweetness is coming into your life. Lots of good things waiting for you to nurture you and serve you and help you. That it is time to leave something behind. And that there are some unexpected gifts for you to unwrap in this new change that you're heading into. So my biggest tip for you is, you know, learning how to handle your own fear. You know, sometimes that might give you insomnia, it might give you anxiety, it might, you know, paralyze you. So here's some good tips about how to deal with fear. Some people like to focus on gratitude. They like to focus on, you know, what they have now, what's working for them now, how far they've come, you know, acknowledging how far that they've come, acknowledging where they're at now, acknowledging what they have now, you know, really just acknowledging what is working, acknowledging how things have changed in the past and how that's helped you get to where you are now, acknowledging that change, acknowledging that process, acknowledging how it's worked. Okay. Another thing that's helpful with fear, this type of fear, it really reminds me of being stuck in the future, like how things are going to turn out, how things are going to work out, if they are going to work out or not. That's an example of being stuck in the future. So a lot of times when you're in that fear, it's a good time to just take a deep breath in and come back to the present moment. Focus on just the moment and what you're doing in the moment. When you're out in the future, it's hard to take a step. It's hard to get things done, and it's definitely not where you're going to create something. So when you're in the present moment, that's how you actually create something. That's how you receive something. That's how you take your next step. That's how you tap into your next step. That's where you receive your intuition, your knowingness, your inspiration. It's all happening right there now in the present moment. So if you start to feel that fear, you know, you might try to manage your energy in such a way so that you get unstuck from the future, unstuck from the past, and come back into the present moment. Unscatter yourself, come back to the present moment. And believe in yourself. You know, practice believing in yourself. Practice reframing things. Practice reassuring yourself that good things are happening, that things will come together, that you might not be able to see it yet, but there are gifts waiting for you. And this thing that's not working for you, it's time to go. There's really nothing left there holding you there, serving you anymore. And that you don't have to fear, because you've been working on something, and, you know, right now is just a little bit of a pause before you see the results of your labor. And this card is definitely encouraging you to keep going, that you will see the fruits of your labor, that the momentum is definitely building around whatever you've been building or growing or working on or committing to or giving your energy to. All right. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. It really helps me out a lot. And I hope you have a great April. Take care. Bye.